within the Forest Department, we assist the programs and projects to implementation of their project activities. One of them, specifically under the GSA Component 5, is to understand the mangrove extent and change over time. My team and I have worked over the past year to collect data in terms of mangroves, ground truthing information using remote sensing techniques. Working with the University of Alabama, our national scientist, Dr. Emil Charrington, to track changes of mangroves since 2020 to 2024. This work has been not only contributing towards national statistics of coverage, but also to understand trends and averages over time and hotspots of mangrove change. This information all contributes towards the National Forest Monitoring System, which is one of our main responsibilities within the Forest Department to implement and report on.
We're taking satellite images, we're taking the numbers, we're taking those out, and we're extracting the different patterns we're seeing, and we're turning those into essentially maps that say, okay, over here, this is this type of forest, over here, this is this type of agriculture, and then we're looking on an annual basis and then saying, over time, okay, are our forests inside of protected areas protected? How is agriculture progressing? How are urban areas expanding? How are our waters doing? And that's really innovative work that's not happening, say, across the globe, but there are specific countries that are doing really well with this technology to influence their management, and Belize is one of those countries.
So overall, the Geospatial Monitoring Unit looks at this activity within as three main components. Data collection in terms of review, but also ground truthing information and analysis. To understand and the areas that we need to visit, we need to use algorithms, random change algorithms to understand ground truthing points. This is queried through Google Earth Engine using the information that exists in terms of coverage. Secondly, that's then implemented in a field map survey app that the team now goes out and collect and verifies.
Today we are out here conducting ground truthing activities in regards to mangrove change verification. What we do is we have a script running on Google Earth Engine which looks for alteration or change in the color of the forest. And the mangrove has a specific color shade that we look for. Whenever the algorithm notice that there's a change in that specific color, we are then warned and we are given a point. Then we take that point and we come out and verify if there was a change or wasn't a change. So that was basically what we were doing today. We've established various plots where we utilize the skills of distance, knowing distance, using direction, and those are the strengths that I utilize along with my colleague Corin Sanchez to better analyze the areas. And also what we do is in the office before we come out, we usually try to get an overview using Google Earth and see what is the makeup of the area and what is the accessibility. So we already would know we would need to fly the drone in certain areas. We did roughly about 6 different areas today. In those areas, from the 6 different areas, we had more or less 3 that had definite change that we could recognize directly right away. And then there was about 2 that really didn't have any significant change. And that is because sometimes the algorithm will give you a false positive. And that's the reason why we need to come out to the ground and verify that there was a change or there wasn't a change. And as soon as we update that, then the algorithm becomes stronger in detecting the changes. We're in the Belize district currently. We're just right off the highway. So a change was detected here. So we came out to verify what the change was, and we noticed that there was land clearing and land filling, clearing of mangrove. And the mangrove type here is dominant by black mangrove, but there is a combination of red mangrove as well due to the creek that runs there, the canal that runs there.
So mangroves are also classified as a forest for Belize. So the National Forest Monitoring System keeps track of what is the extent of the forest that we have in the country and the change, if any, to forests. So the mangrove mapping exercise that we're doing essentially gives us an idea of how many mangroves we are losing, or the area of mangroves that we're losing, if any, to land use change, and the different areas that this is occurring in. So mangroves store more carbon than broadleaf forests, and the carbon plots that we're establishing at the Belize Forest Department. These will give us an idea of the amount of carbon that is stored within these mangrove forests, and that information is incorporated into the greenhouse gas inventory. And using the mapping results, that is what gives us an idea of the total carbon that is being sequestered within these mangrove areas for Belize. So for Belize, we're using the blue carbon methodology from Kaufman Donato, and this is a methodology that is standardized regionally, and it is a methodology that gives us methods of measuring biomass above ground and below ground for mangrove forests, and also for soil carbon within the mangrove forest, because majority of the carbon in mangroves are stored in the soil. The data is the location. First, when you go to a plot, we have to get the GPS coordinate of the location that is within the country. And then we also take the heights of the mangrove, the diameter of the mangrove, the canopy width, the depth, the species of mangroves, because not all mangrove forests are one species. We have 3 species of mangroves in Belize. We have red, black, and white. And so we also have to indicate what species we found in the plot. We also have to count the number of propagules, rooted propagules in the plot, and these are essentially the seedlings that we expect to develop into an entire mangrove tree. So we do have studies that have been done in Belize for mangrove carbon estimates. However, these are not substantial, and because mangroves occur both inland and on the coast, and it covers a very large area, what the Belize Forest Department is doing is complementing the previous carbon studies and then establishing permanent plots so that we can also account for mangrove growth rates, because the previous studies are temporary plots, so it's just a one-time carbon stock measurement, whereas what we're trying to do is see how does carbon increase over time, and so that's why the plots that we're establishing are permanent, but it's following the same methodology as the temporary plots. The challenge is finding areas that will not be susceptible to land use change. Unfortunately, a lot of the mangrove areas that we have in Belize is privately owned, or they're government land, but it's not under a protected status. So the chances of it being under private land or under lease is a very high possibility. And because we need these carbon plots or these areas to not be disturbed so we can account for the change over time, we've primarily been establishing them in protected areas, but most of our mangroves are not within protected areas.
In regards to the challenges we faced conducting the mangrove verification ground shooting, the most challenge we faced were that lands were located near or in private locations. So access to those areas was limited for us. What we did to address those issues was to utilize a drone, a Mavic 3 Classic, and what we did is, between me and Corin, we analyzed the distance of the point from where we are, the direction, and then we sent the drone directly over the point, and then we capture a aerial image of the area, and then we analyze it using that method.
That information then is now provided to Dr. Eming Charrington to do the analysis in terms of results. This information then provides overall analysis in terms of uncertainty of the data that's being produced. To implement this activity, we have to look at it at 3 different phases. The first phase is desktop work, where we analyze the area of extent and change. This is all done through change detection algorithms and using quality control assurance activities. Once this information is provided to us, we then use this information to develop field map surveys through Edgeway platform, where the information is now ground truthed. Thirdly, this information is then provided to the lead researcher, where their analysis of change is then compiled and reported on.
Somebody might look at a satellite image and see green on it, but we can use that imagery and we can extract off, how has the forest cover been changing over time, and based off of that, how has the government of Belize been meeting different obligations it has to different multilateral environmental agreements. How healthy are our forests doing? Because also the health of our people depends on the health of our ecosystems. So one ingredient that you need the satellite imagery, because this gives us a wall-to-wall picture of the whole territory of Belize. And we have satellite imagery on an annual basis going all the way back to 1972. That's one ingredient. Another ingredient You could have drone imagery that's being collected by people from the Forest Department, from the University of Belize. The other ingredient, you need the local scientific knowledge that foresters have about, okay, when we see this pattern on this satellite image, what kind of forest is that? Or what does this represent? If you see the pixel looks pink or a specific color, what does that mean? And so we take the information that's collected in the field, we take the know-how from our local scientists who work at places like Forest Department at the University of Belize, and we take the algorithms and we put that all together, and hopefully then we have information that can then be taken back to cabinet, to the ministers, and say, okay, this is how we're doing, and this is how Belize is or isn't meeting these different international commitments. When we look at data from, say, the mid-1990s, compared to up to last year or the end of last year, we see that at least mangroves in protected areas, areas like the Burden Canal Nature Reserve and other areas near Belize City, we see that the mangroves in the protected areas are being protected. And we see that, I believe following 2017, that there's definitely been a slowdown in terms of clearing rates of mangroves outside of protected areas, which one could consider a positive sign. I guess in general terms, what the algorithm is doing is converting satellite imagery into maps of different forest cover types. And then by comparing an image from one year with another year and comparing what we're mapping off of each image, then we can tell when you see changes in mangrove cover, when we see changes in protected areas. We see that changes in mangrove cover, also in forest cover in general, are occurring outside of protected areas. And in terms of mangrove cover more specifically, we find that loss of mangroves, destruction of mangroves, has essentially fallen off quite a bit over the last 15 years or so, which seems to indicate that the government of Belize, their NGO partners and others are, say, making progress in terms of how effective they are in terms of enforcing the laws. That's what the data seem to indicate. We could also, again, take these products that we've generated using these different algorithms, and we can see how, again, at least on the Belize side, we see that the greens, for the most part, are staying green, at least inside of protected areas. We do, however, see some, expansion of agricultural areas, etc. Places like Belize City also, have expanded over time as could be expected.
This information is then now used within our National Forest Monitoring System to understand mangrove change over time, which is critical for planning, for modeling, for looking at hotspots in terms of our national reporting documents. Nevertheless, we also look at carbon within these different plots, which is actually aligned to our national greenhouse gas inventory. And all this information is then fed into as part of our National Forest Monitoring System, which then allows us again to plan in terms of future activities when it comes to mangrove protection.
So through the GSA project, the Government Strategic Allocation that the Forest Department is currently a recipient of, we are in charge of Component 5 that has to do with mangrove monitoring and socialization. Through the GSA, we have funding to establish these carbon plots, and we are also looking at other project sources to be able to continue the work that we're doing, because it's not just a one-time measurement that we have to do, but measurement that we have to take over time. And so it's primarily project-based that the department gets funding to do this sort of work.
So this work contributes towards national capacity building. We ensure that whatever is being done throughout this project is implemented within Belize. The capacity is stayed within house, within the Forest Department, but also provide support to other ministries nationally. This will allow us to replicate this work in the future and also understand the methodology completely. We couldn't do this without the support of the Belize Forest Department, the Ministry of Sustainable Development, and also the support from the government of Belize. So we thank the international partners, which is also from the University of Alabama, Huntsville, Dr. Emil Charrington, that have been supporting us throughout this process.